Hello everyone, welcome to Second Thoughts overview of Alith Anar of the High Elves. As always in these reviews I went over the initial turns and got a feel for how the faction can play out. Now this is my conclusion, and in the end of the video I'll show you some army compositions that I would love to try out in the campaign. Now as always, this is not a full in-depth guide, but rather how it would approach the campaign, and it most certainly will help you out. Now without further, let's play with Alith Anar of the High Elves. So for your short victory condition, you need to destroy the faction of Nagaron, so Malekith basically, it's pretty close by, and control the province of Nagarith, which is really over here to the north of Ulthuan. Now, expanding into different locations, of course, that's always an issue. Now, you also need to occupy, loot, or sack, raise or sack, of course, 30 different settlements. Now, the reward is +3 hero capacity for all heroes. Like always, good to ensure you get to have more heroes in your armies or scouts without requiring the infrastructure for it. Now, this is a very good campaign, actually. Very short, good to have a nice idea about the faction and without having to invest too much time as well. Now, the long campaign changes things. You need to achieve the short campaign, you need to occupy, loot, raise or sack 70 different settlements, and maintain control of, I'll save you, this is the whole Ulthuan island, basically. So you need to maintain control of all of this. You're also required to destroy every single Dark Elf faction, including the Blessed Dread in faraway Cathay, and the Thousand Maws located in Lustria. Needless to say, you're more likely, unless you rush those or you're lucky enough for them to be destroyed without your presence, you're likely to get domination before you even get those. If you try to dominate the map until then. So, reward if you manage to achieve it, it's +10 hero recruit rank. It's good to continue into domination. Of course, at this point it might already have happened, since it is such a lengthy campaign. Now, Alith Anar, he leads the Court of the Shadowlands, so he does have the marked for death mechanic, basically. All armies get extra campaign movement range, which is always cool. It's always good. He has a unique right, the Invocation of Morai Hag, which actually summons a unique hero that always manages to assassinate the target, so it never fails, which is actually quite cool. And then you have a lesser global recruitment duration, -1 turn for every single unit, which is always nice. It's rather cool, actually. These are significant buffs without looking that much, but they are very significant as well. Now, in terms of climate, it's very average. Only 2 suitable climates. I mean, look at that. The rest of it is either unpleasant or uninhabitable. Let me show you like this. And yeah, let me show you. It's it's a pain. So nearly you have this area that it's kind of green for you, and that's your solid base area, and then even the whole Ulthuan island that you need to conquer for the long victory is unpleasant to you. So yeah, most of the map is actually unpleasant or even hostile here, or uninhabitable as you mean over here. So yeah, it's not the easiest faction whatsoever for a full map completion. It's actually one of the hardest, definitely. So your starting location is a 3-settlement province, but rather in the middle of enemies. It's right here. Soon you'll have to contend with greater foes, so expansion must be fast and swift, and you may face opponents on different sides. Like expanding too much over here, maybe you'll come into contact with the Warriors of Chaos. Expanding here to the Black Light Tower, which is inevitable, will put you in contact with other Dark Elves. You know, even at the Monoliths, you already will be in contact with the Vampire Coast, and soon Taurox will show up, so yeah, typical expansion is difficult. It's to dominate, of course, this peninsula area, then proceed into your objectives. Now, by that time, you'll likely have multiple wars, so you are close to the sea, of course. You can benefit from the goodies there, as well as having some initial nice buildings, so in units that you can use in that regard, but not the easiest starting location for certain. Actually, one of the hardest, definitely. So in terms of diplomacy, very easily you're part of the Order Tide. So Dark Elves are your sworn enemy, you'll be fighting them forever. The Vampire Coast, Beastmen, Noska and Chaos will all soon follow. So the other way around, the Empire, the Dwarfs, Bretonnia and others may become your friends, but you'll have to find them first. Still, good outposts with the purpose of getting better cavalry and artillery are always great possibilities. I would always recommend that you try to initiate negotiations with them. Send a hero here to scout, just so that you can start building up those allegiance points and building up those trade and everything, because otherwise you're kind of alone in this island and there's no contact whatsoever. The only thing that you maybe come into contact here is actually Grombrindle, and that's not even for certain. He may die before that. So yeah, by all means send a hero down as soon as you can, just to get, you know, a glimpse of the possible allies, and then get into the outposts. That certainly will be the great idea. So in terms of mechanics, there are a few extra ones. So Alith Anar's armies have a specific stance that gives them a chance to ambush while attacking, similar to the Skaven ones. So this alone helps steer the faction into different possibilities. They also have the use Shadow Realm pathways, which is basically just an underway. So definitely a good tactical advantage there already with these two different stances. Now he receives as well the Mark for Death mechanic. It gives him targets to be assassinated or defeated in battle. Now if you succeed, of course you get all those rewards, which may include, you know, a hefty amount of influence and treasury, but also some specific rewards, such as the diplomatic relations here or less recruitment cost. So all of these buffs, of course, will take for, you know, 10 turns, 20 turns, regardless. But the idea here is that if you manage to succeed and get those targets, by all means, it's always nice to get that influence, to get that treasury, and of course the other buffs as well. Now, influence, we were talking about that. It's kind of like a currency in essence. It allows two things. It allows you to recruit better lords and heroes. Let me show you. So for instance, the ones that cost 60, their traits will be much better compared to the ones that cost 15, for instance. Their traits won't be as good. And then there's the ones that don't cost any influence, who have negative traits. So that's why, in order for you to recruit any lords whatsoever, you'll always need a little bit of influence, at least 15, in order to do so. Same thing happens with the heroes. And then you have the other part of the mechanic, which is the intrigue at the court. Now, what this does is that it allows you to improve relations or decrease the relations between any two factions that you know of, so to steer the relations into your enemies, your allies, into whatever you prefer. So you do have tons of options, although it may prove costly. And, well, whenever anyone kind of refuses a deal, well, you can always influence them. So I really like this. I wish it had a different take. It's just too minimalistic, but still, don't neglect it and use it for certain, especially when you're trying to get, you know, a good amount, a set of allies. Perhaps it's always good to make sure that they are also liking each other, so that you guys are, you know, stronger together, that sort of idea. Or the other way around, to undermine characters that are neutral so that they become enemies, that sort of idea. Now, rights are really nice always. You have the following. A unique hero. This one is really cool because he assassinates without fail. So it conjugates really well with the other marked for death mechanic. So you can, if you manage to get this guy, just send him to that target and he'll succeed. That's very easy, actually. Now, you also have the immune to attrition, casualty replenishment rate, and less corruption in all provinces, which is nice. This is actually very detrimental for you to conquer those uninhabitable areas. So make sure that you have it available whenever you're going into those areas. Otherwise, it's a pain. So this is the only reason why it's even bearable to do that. Now, you also have an influence per turn, construction costs for all buildings reduced, and more control for provinces. Pretty much this should be on every single time that you manage. Okay? Every single time that you can, you get the invocation of Assyrian, and then the other one circumstantially. And then you have this one, the invocation of Vol, which this is not really well seen. There's a dilemma that offers a powerful magical item. Many people consider this to be the best part, because the other ones, it's just for, you know, recruitment cost, rank for, of course, your elite units. By all means, if you're recruiting them, it's really fine. But for the most part, you want that powerful magical item. The other buffs are kind of, they're good to have additional ones, basically. That's the idea. Now, they're quite cheap overall compared to some rights, so for the High Elves, definitely should always be checking if you can have one active, because, of course, being so cheap and always very useful, by all means have it. Now, you also have the Sword of Cain available, so basically it's kind of far away. You'll always need to dominate this province nevertheless, but the main idea is that if you control that the location that is here on the map, then you can build a Shrine of Cain and get the Sword of Cain from it. But who knows, maybe you will wish for, Alith Anar to own it, to yield it. It's always an option. Remember that it does have issues, that it does bring issues, because it brings you less control, less diplomatic options, but sometimes it's a good different change of pace to have a hero yield it. It's very powerful, but it wrecks the campaign wise playthrough, so yeah, it's up to you. You'll be really good in battle and rather a little bit more poor in campaign, so it's up to you. It's your decision. Now, one specific mechanic that I wanted to bring about is the lines of the skill lines of lords. So you have a dedication to do, and all of this either affects the army, as in lesser upkeep, or more leadership, like you see for those units there, or something more into the local province, as you see there. So by all means, just use this specifically when you want to dedicate to a specific type of unit. For instance, maybe this lord will already go into, I don't know, maybe these, the spearmen, the rangers, the archers, and maybe you want to add this. For instance, casual replenishment rate, by all means, is really cool. You'll have that, so and again, it will be much better. So all these dedications, of course, it will give you a slightly different playstyle. It's only one skill point, so it's not really that doesn't cause any harm to your build overall, but by all means it may give you a little bit more customization, which is always nice. So for your province edicts, you have the growth or construction costs reduced for all buildings. You also have a sort of defensive one, which is enemy campaign movement range is diminished, enemy hero action success as well, ambush success chance for you is increased, which really plays out with your faction. So if you're defending, by all means, always remember this. And you also get a chance of intercepting an army. So this specifically where you start, I can only think of Taurox that will use it. The beast paths, actually. You also get the wood elves nearby, the sisters. Maybe they will use it if you get to fight them. But yeah, always remember that you actually have this. It's very easy to just, put the construction cost and growth or income one and forget about it. But the defensive one, sometimes it's the trick that will help you out, getting a little bit of more success chance for that ambush, and suddenly the enemy becomes much more easy to defeat, much easier to defeat, much more easy. So we have the income from trade tariffs faction wide, which is always nice. If you have a lot of trade, then by all means this can increase quite exponentially and give you a lot of income, so always remember that. Then you have recruit rank +1 and local recruitment capacity +1. I wish it was +2. That was always much better. It always is worth it, the investment. By all means, sometimes you're just, especially in the beginning, maybe if you get the first province really fast and you still want a couple of extra units so that it can get to that 20 stack, or maybe a secondary 20 stack much easier, well then by all means always remember that you have that option. Less corruption in case you're under attack by a lot of corruption, of course, useful in the higher difficulties, that's certain. And I'll speak about the other one. In terms of army stances, I already mentioned briefly, you do have the chance to ambush when attacking, which is always nice. It's really cool, especially for the overall playthrough of the faction. Then you have the Shadow Realms, so you can traverse different terrain, which is always nice. You do have a better defense chance to ambush, okay? Contrary, you don't have actually, contrary to other means, you don't have a chance to be intercepted. So always remember that, because it's only battle initiation disabled. The only thing that you have in terms of negativity, you don't have all those of the underway the typical stance, so it's a little bit of an improvement there as well. Now, you do have the Lilith's Blessing, which is more Winds of Magic Power Reserve. It only costs 10% movement range to put in, and it gives you even more experience for spellcasters, less miscast space chance, and more speed. So if you're relying on spellcasters, and if you still have, if the enemy is nearby, by all means pop this one up, and at least it will benefit the spellcasters for sure. Then you have Encamp, of course, very basic, enables replenishment and access to global, recruitment pool, and immune to attrition. It's always good that you have the Encamp, so that helps when you're going into the uninhabitable or unpleasant locations, of course, to ensure that you don't get wrecked by attrition. And then we have Ambush, 25% movement cost in order to set up an ambush. This is the defensive ambush, of course, so you have the offensive one, which is you attack and try to ambush, and then you have the defensive one, which is you just stay hidden. That's most of the time what you wish, just to stay hidden to ensure that the enemy does different movements, and then you can surprise them. And of course, force march, by all means. So in terms of buildings, you don't have anything really specific in the first province that you get. You get military require 8 buildings, 3 of which can actually be completed fully in minor settlements. Now you do have this specific building, the SNR camp, which gives you Shadow Warriors and Shadow Walkers, which most of the time you should be recruiting. They're already very good hybrid and very ranged units. I mean, typically hybrid units don't have that amount of range, but these guys do. So it's already a very good unit, and definitely a different playthrough compared to other High Elves. So yeah, always invest on those, because and they're tier 2 as well. So a great archer. You need tier 4 to reach that level, of archer. Of course, sisters are probably likely better, but still these guys are not too shabby, especially at that tier 2. Likely best tier 2 unit, tier 2 archer in the game whatsoever. Now, tier 3 units are already quite phenomenal, especially holding infantry. The Lothan Sea Guns with shields is really a good flexible unit. You do have some White Lions, you do have some War Lions of Krace, of course. You still have an artillery unit if you need one. You do have access to all your casters at that level, so tier 3 units, don't neglect those. They'll be able to give you enough holding power and some great archers, of course. But then in the tier 4, with the better chariots, with the sisters, with the frost art, the phoenixes, and starting with the dragons as well as getting the sword masters, yeah, by all means, tier 4, tier 5, that's where the big guns are. Of course, with most typical rosters, that's what happens, but don't neglect the tier 3. They're still really powerful, and they'll be able to give you good combinations so that it can have an easier early and mid game, certainly. Now, as for infrastructure, you get growth and casualty replenishment. You also get income generated, which is even better if the control is full, which gives you even more income. Then you have an income and control building, and when control is better, they still give you more income, so try to get the control to 100 sometimes, guys. Then you have the Elven Court to unlock the noble, to give more hero capacity and hero recruit rank for nobles, and gives you also more income from entertainment buildings. That's this one. So by all means, try to get at least one of these for province, which is always helpful, of course. It also unlocks some technologies, and you still have the Elven Embassy. Don't neglect this one. It gives you influence per turn. It gives you 10% income from ports, and you're gonna have a lot of them. And also the hero action success chance, enemy hero action success chance. It's always good to, if you're having trouble with lots of enemy armies or lots of enemies in different locations, of course. Don't neglect this. This and that eat it. Suddenly you're kind of impervious to enemy heroes, which is always nice, and more income from traitor ifs always helps. But the influence per turn, the income from ports, by all means, that's what I will put at least one of these Elven embassies, of course, to gather. Now, in terms of the research, let me go into the research. It's really awesome, actually. They do have quite a lot of advancements. This is more into the early game units, such as the spears, such as the Lothan Sea Gods, such the Reavers. And then you have the secondary ones, which is more like it still goes into those, but notice that it starts giving you the tier 2 units, the Shadow Walkers, some of the chariot units, as you see there. Then you go into the third, which is kind of like tier 3, more tier 4 units, as you see. So there's a lot of it. By the time that you reach the very final one, your units are crazy good. High Elves get so much more power from the research and redline skills. That's incredible, actually. So yeah, definitely really cool. It also gives you some good campaign changes. So this is more still, as you can see, this still gives you more upgrades here, but there's also some income from trade, as you can see there, less upkeep for dragon units. Let me see here, growth and income from ports. So yeah, by all means, achieving getting, you know, some specific resources will give you some good techs as well. And then you also get the ones that are mostly affecting diplomacy, by all means. So you get more diplomatic relations with High Elves, with Lysamen, you know, and definitely with all factions, for instance. So it's always nice to ensure that you get, you know, keep an eye on all of these researchers, and definitely try to develop in this specific way. Try to get, you know, a specific resource if you wish to go for that specific technology and that sort of idea. It allows you some good strategy, so just don't need to memorize it, but keep an eye on it, because sometimes you're going to have a very good tech that actually changes the gameplay really well, and that's all that we want. So as always, you have your Lord specific skills, the yellow line or caster. In this case it's more of the archer one, because of course Alith Anar does go further into the range. He's good in melee, but he's also better in range, so that's why. And then you have the red line or army one and the blue line or campaign. Now, starting with the blue line, it does have upkeep reduction and replenishment here, but this one is cool because of the attrition, so it's always nice. But it's quite expensive. Everything's quite expensive, so be wary of that, especially if you want to have all of his specific ones and then make him a powerful force here and still give him some specific units for his army. So yeah, if you can manage a good composition for him without spending too much in the red line, then for sure try to get for that replenishment, of course, if you need, or if you wish. Now, red line does give you some great army compositions with units for mostly every role. Most of the time I build armies considering the specific lord's traits, which is always nice. Now, heroes are really excellent, as they can provide some specific bonuses for your units. I don't have anyone here, but in specific, let me show you in the building browser. You do have the noble giving you some replenishment, and you also have the handmaiden giving you not only replenishment, but I'm not showing you the skill line here, but she also gives bonuses for missile troops, and of course you're going to focus a lot of that with Alith Anar, so by all means try to get a couple of handmaidens in your armies. By all means, they're going to be really good at sniping enemy lords and at buffing up your troops, which is always cool. And adding to that, of course, you have all the different lores of magic. Just try out different lores, different compositions, so that you can have even more fun with the faction, of course. So here are the red line skills for the High Elves. Note that some units actually benefit from bonuses from 2 skill lines. For instance, the Militia Master and Bowmaster affecting both archers, spearmen. So yeah, it's always cool, especially Loathen Sea Gods. Yeah, definitely they'll become really cool, a staple for your early armies if you need, because of course, you know, with these skills, they'll become good in both roles, either in holding infantry or in missile infantry, which is always nice. Then you get all the monsters here, you get all the elite infantry here, and then there's this sort of division between high quality cavalry and lower quality cavalry. It's up to you which one to use, but yeah, it does give you some good army compositions. Now, it's still a rather expensive one, but at least you do have some compositions focused. Now, Alith Anar, he thus focuses on Shadow Walkers and Shadow Warriors. Thus, combinations using those elite archers are in order. So this is a very standard one. Instead of using the Sisters of Avalon, I'll just put the Shadow Walkers there. By all means, the This is a rather different, more focused on the ambush part, you know. Every single one unit here will be able to start firing at the enemy, and then you get a couple of units just to hammer whatever they have that it's you know, dangerous, for instance, you know, just some more elite units here. This could be, you know, just some single entities if you wish, or, you know, just some frontline infantry. By all means, you know, this is just a theoretical one if you're going to go into dive deep into that ambush idea. But nothing wrong, of course, of using, you know, just a typical elven front line of you know, elite troops with Sisters of Avalon there and just some shadow walkers, maybe just a couple of artillery units to snipe enemy artillery units, you know. But by all means, the main idea of this is rather cheap in terms of red line skills, so maybe that's an option that you would like. Go forth and try out your own compositions. These are just a couple of ideas. You can even use one of these with Alith Anar. It's up to you. This, for instance, is an idea for those heroes that have reduced upkeep for Lorthan Sea Gods and Illyrian Reavers. So by all means, this is a very good sweeper army. Something to deal... I always like to mention those sweeper armies, which is armies that you don't necessarily send out against the most elite stacks of the enemy, but they are very useful once you've broken. You've broken through, you've killed the main stacks of the enemy. All that they are doing is trying to replenish their forces and try to muster a new defense, and you can sweep in with these units. Exactly, sweep through their settlements, their unguarded settlements, get rid of their armies that are still not fully replenished, etc. It will do the job really nicely, and it's always a good secondary army to have, especially because it will be cheaper, and that's always one of the main ideas. But nothing wrong with going with the 2 initial stacks. You know, those are very tried and true. I'll always beat the game using these type of stacks, so it's kind of fine. Then, of course, several different compositions. For instance, these ones are using the Frostheart Phoenix for slowing down the enemies. So sometimes you can use a mage to actually focus even further on that, anything that gives them slow or anything like that, so that, you know, your systems can even shine further and your infantry can, you know, charge home and get rid of the enemy. So that sort of idea, it's always nice. I always like to incentive different types of play so that you get, you know, instead of just the typical one style of play, that you have several ones, so that you can, you know, try and enjoy the faction in a different manner. For instance, this will be a more ambush style faction, of course, not faction, army, just more focused into, you know, if you manage to ambush the enemy, good luck to them. That's plenty of power to deal with anything that they may come up with. No infantry whatsoever, but that the style is here just to, you know, hammer in, you know, get through the enemy and rip them apart. It's really cool. And yeah, that's the sort of ideas. Always note, let me mention one thing. I always put one caster hero, one melee hero, you know. This is just the sort of idea. You can have neither. You can have 4 heroes, 5 heroes, whatever you choose, a full army of heroes if you wish. This is just so that I always recommend that you keep one caster hero so that you have options for magic, and one melee hero or you know, ranged hero, just so that you can support your troops or support that caster to, you know, keep enemy lords out of the way of that caster. That sort of idea. So, Alith Anar, he adds a bit of fun with his mechanics. You'll be feeling like a High Elf Skaven, really, ambushing on attack with that mechanic, having compositions solely based on that possibility. It's always nice. In addition, your starting position alone is interesting and dangerous. Surrounded by enemies, you do have the early game options to deal with it. Be wary of war on multiple fronts, but be prepared for that as well. It's more likely than other factions that it will happen, but you'll enjoy the continuous ambushes and better units that you get from the start. So your army is, for the most part, composed of great infantry, great missile infantry, good cavalry and chariots, they do lack some armor piercing, great single entities, average artillery, and it's lacking early armor piercing. Replenishment is average. It does depend a lot on the climate. Climate is a pain with Alith Anar. It's a bit of a problem, not the easiest faction, like I mentioned, to achieve domination with. I believe it is now time that you play with Alith Anar from the High Elves.